Senator Inouye served in the Hawaii State Senate for 10 years from 1998 to 2008, was Hawaii County Mayor from 1990 to 1992, and was on Hawaii County Council from 1984 to 1990. In the 2017 legislative session, Senator Inouye was chair of the Senate. She's chair of Transportation and Energy and a member of the Water and Land and the Ways and Means Committees. Senator Inouye, stand up so everybody can see who you are. Just for 1 second. Let's give her a warm thank you. Representative Mark Nakashima's first House district includes North Kohala, South Kohala, Hamakua, North Hilo, and South Hilo. In his previous life, he was an aide to U.S. Senator Spark Matsunaga, Representative Dwight Takamine, and Representative Eric Hamakawa. He used to be a teacher at Honoka'a High, teaching history and economics, and he was a staff member for Hawaii State Teachers Association. He's a graduate of the University of Hawaii at Manoa with a degree in education and professional diploma in education with an emphasis in political science. He's a member of the Economic Development and Business Committee. And after the shakeup in the House, after the special legislative session, and Rep. Cindy Evans stepped down as House Speaker after voting no on the rail solution bill, and Rep. Della Albalati was named House Speaker, Rep. Nakashima was appointed to Albalati's old job of House Vice Speaker. Stand up, Rep. Nakashima. Let us welcome you. And Representative Chris Todd. He represents House District 2, Keaukaha, parts of Hilo, Panaewa, and Waiakea. He was born and raised in Hilo and graduated from UH Hilo with a degree in economics and political science. He used to be with Suisun Fish Market and Hawaii Paper Products in his pre-representative life. And then he was appointed by Governor David Ige on January 5th, 2017 to fill the position left vacant when Rep. Suji died. Rep. Todd is Vice Chair of the Committee on Human Services and is a member of the Committees on Consumer Protection and Commerce and Health, and he also coaches football at Hilo High. Stand up, Rep. Todd.
Thank you, Sherry, and thank you to President Audrey Takamine and members of the directors and the chamber as well for this invitation. And thank you to the staff as well for helping me to share a copy of one of my presentations. But before that, I'd like to introduce my staff member who's new to my office. And Tonga Hopoi is standing up there in the back in black. She came to my office from the Obama administration, working in the Department of Energy, as well as being the policy director, as well as other initiatives for First Lady Michelle Obama in the White House. The 2017 legislative session was certainly a robust one. We worked together with our constituents and stakeholders from across the state, and were successful to move forward key legislation for your communities, some key legislation. It's well known that one of the many obstacles hindering the growth and success of small businesses in Hawaii is the duplicative, costly, and often necessary administrative rules that disproportionately impact small businesses, which many of you are here today. One of the bills I wanted to discuss, if you haven't known about it, is Senate Bill 908 relating to the Small Business Regulatory Flexibility Act. This has been hindrance to small businesses over the years. But this bill clarifies the rulemaking procedure. Many of the rules of the Department of DOTAX proposes to affect, I think we're losing it. Okay, I'll continue on. On DOTAX proposes affect small businesses. However, determining whether to submit a small business impact statement can sometimes be difficult. So making such a determination incorrectly could result in the rules being overturned because they were improperly promulgated. So this measure removes that risk and puts the determination of whether proposed rules affect small businesses into the board's hands. Another bill that comes to mind is Senate Bill 900, that's relating to the Hawaii Community-Based Economic Development Technical and Financial Assistance Program. And this measure supports DBED's efforts to assist community-based economic development initiatives in the state, and it's very important for us on Hawaii Island as well. and its overall economic development strategy. This passage of SB 900 made 3 critical and needed amendments to improve efficiency in that particular program. First, it broadens the definition of what the CBO is all about. I think, okay, here we go again. It removes the membership based from the definition of CBO, which ensures hello. No. Here, this one. Okay, let's try this. I think this feels good. Okay, and another one, another initiative is that it provides support as needed based on the capacity of the CBO, and this as such, including technical assistance as an option for grants, will ensure startups and grassroots organizations with limited capacity that will be able to get assistance from this particular program. So I think we're talking about fast action. And it also increases the opportunities for the Advisory Council to meet and work. As part of the state budget bill passed in conference this past session, we were able to include funding for CIP projects statewide, and I will limit it to the Big Island's success. For Big Island, we acquired over $11 million in CIPs and nearly $6 million of those funds for my particular District 4, as well as with the assistance and the support of our Big Island delegation. I won't go into it in detail, but I'll go on it later because I know I have 10 minutes because there are some bills I'd like to talk about. The current projects in the pipeline, and I believe, do we have circulated copies? Okay, from the Senate bill and CIPs, we added a new statute that has to do with transportation, and it's called the Polaris Auto Cycle on the Road, and there's a picture on your tables. And it's a matter of time for the manufacturer to fund the inventory to Hawaii. And it's called the Slingshot, and it's the only model of its kind. It's a 3-wheeler, and it's different from a motorcycle. And so what we needed to do was add that particular vehicle into statute, so when it comes here, we'll already be legal, you can buy it, and you can drive it on the road. It also has passengers, so it's a passenger motorcycle, sort of. The Morgan and the Campania T-Rex, for example, but it's not in this price range, is also a new vehicle being designed and on the market. But the power comes from the 4-cylinder, 2.4-liter Ecotec supplied by General Motors. One could afford to buy something for recreational use on the highway. I have always been on the forefront as well towards our clean energy efficiency and initiatives. I am and committed to continue the efforts and initiative resource process of the renewable energy portfolio, and particularly SB 7, Senate Bill 665, which many of you in the energy industry came to support. And what it does is it reduces the current renewable energy tax credit that you have currently when you put photovoltaic on your roofs as well. And it includes energy storage, which energy storage was not in the current statute. And so what this bill is introduced by myself is building efficiency and energy designs. So what it will do, like the feds has already done, start ramping down the energy tax credits. And what we're doing is adding energy storage within the bill, because we don't have a tax credit yet for energy storage. And over time, I believe that we'll be able to have as many of those participate in the renewable process, start getting your photovoltaic on the roof, and hopefully it'll pass again this year. Has been stalled in conference because the House had some disagreements with that measure. Leading, one of the projects I'd like to say with DOT is to convert our fleet, our state fleets to EV. With transportation, I know we all wanted to have transportation completely into EV, sort of, but I think we have to take a slow action with regards to how we're looking at EVs, transportation vehicles going forward, and I'll cover that shortly. But with regards to the Bill 665, which I included with the ramping down of the energy tax credits, are the infrastructure for charging stations, as many as we can on the road. One measure that affects many of you in the petroleum industry or gas and affects many of us on this island, and that's why I had disagreements with House Bill 1500, which is 1580, I'm sorry, which we ended up going into conference. And what this bill does is converting the transportation to 100% by 2045. And that's not reasonable. We can do, and we have energy renewables for utilities by 2045, which is great. We're already on the way. But when it came to the House bill that included a timeline of changing our entire transportation system by 2045, that's impossible. And my disagreement was that, and I use Big Island as an example. We have the big cargoes, the commerce that goes back and forth between Hilo and Kona. We also have heavy use of vehicles that are used by our own families. We have, I understand, one of the largest trucking capacity on this island, personally used. Now, to turn that into 2045, to get rid of petroleum or diesel, I think it's impossible. So SB 665, 658, I want to relate to you, I need your support in the airport authority. The airport authority is a biggie. We must transfer a government-regulated airport management to the authority. We are one of only 3 states that still manages airports. And I think it's time. The governor is in support of it, and it's my bill, and the House has stalled this measure in conference.
Can you take a break and let them talk?
Okay, I will take a break. I will continue about one more, but we can do that on Q&A.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's go to Rep. Nakashima first. Chris Todd's the newest member of the legislature. We want to give him a little breaking into this. So Rep. Nakashima, tell us kind of what your priorities are for the next upcoming session. Anything you want to comment about what's already happened. No more than 10 minutes, please.
Okay. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I think that for me, I find myself kind of in a new role. So I guess I have to feel out my way in terms of what this coming session is going to look like. Up until now, this past year I chaired economic development, and I come out of that from spending 4 years as chair of labor. And in the labor committee, I found that it was kind of a constant ongoing tug of war on a lot of the issues that came to labor. Things like minimum wage, unemployment insurance, workers' compensation. There's always 2 sides to the coin in all of those issues. And so I find myself as labor chair being more of the referee as the employee-employer side kind of battle it out at the legislature. And I think one of the things that we did do during my tenure there is that we put in place a number of different working groups and studies that should come to fruition this coming year with regard to trying to streamline the workers' compensation process, look at unemployment insurance, and take care of some of the issues that have been ongoing for the last couple decades, I'd venture, with regard to those areas. Also in labor, one of the things that I had was I was in charge of workforce development, so training of the workforce, and I found that as a teacher, that's kind of where I tended to excel, because workforce training is education, and I know education. And so, we put in place a number of different projects that looked at the workforce and how we could develop it. We created 3 advisory groups to the Director of Labor, one in agriculture, one in healthcare, and one in STEM. And this comes off of a U.S. Department of Labor, Federal Department of Labor study that found that we were lacking in those 3 areas, and there would be a need for additional workforce in those areas. As a result of that, now we have a number of different programs that are looking at developing the workforce in agriculture, in healthcare, and in STEM technologies, and they're happening all across the state. In Hilo, this past year, we had a engineering summit at Hawaii Community College, where high school students were involved in a 6-week program that kind of introduced them to different types of engineering skills. We had a cohort at UH Hilo, which took future farmer students from the different high schools and took them out to different schools and give them paid internships during the summer to kind of learn more about agriculture. In healthcare, we were working with the University of Hawaii School of Medicine in providing healthcare resource outreach to different schools island-wide. And so in these ways, we're providing opportunities for different individuals who are looking at working in those different types of areas. And expanding the workforce is kind of something that the state had not been doing as a state activity for a long time. Another program that didn't happen here yet, but is happening in the state, is universal banking, where the bankers have come to us and worked together with the Department of Labor and the community colleges to develop a program that is looking at how we are going to retool the tellers, because more and more everybody's just going up to the machine or doing it on their phone. So how do you provide banking services in other ways? And so retraining of tellers to kind of a universal banker type of thing that will allow them to succeed. So there are opportunities throughout the workforce as things progress. Looking at new ways of doing the job and getting the job delivered, is an important kind of thing that we're looking for. And the ability of the Department of Labor through this micro grant process that we've created to provide funding for those kinds of short-term fixes has kind of been key, and it's allowing the state to kind of move faster than usual in terms of providing resources necessary where there are identified needs. Another area was pharmacy technology. So farm techs, basically assistance to the pharmacists. Two classes were held already on Oahu at Kapiolani Community College, and every one of the graduates of that particular program were already picked up by the pharmacies on Oahu. So you're trying to identify the needs and put people back to work. So workforce development and workforce training has been key for me. On the economic development side, I find myself in a slightly different role. Instead of preparing the workforce, I'm now trying to create jobs. So it's job creation as opposed to job training. And on the job creation side, I think there are a number of different opportunities that we have been looking at. the joint manufacturing facility that was mentioned earlier is something that we have been working on for a number of years, looking at the this started with my predecessor, Dwight Takamine, who brought together the astronomy industry and started looking at the jobs that were available in astronomy and how we could ensure that more of the local residents qualified and were placed in those positions. And out of that grew this idea of not only going for maintenance crews or support people, but how do we create the equipment that go onto these telescopes, and can we do that here? So the idea behind the joint manufacturing facility was, looking at the next level. So instead of outsourcing these equipments to Los Angeles or Tokyo or wherever home is for these telescopes, to begin to create the expertise locally for that to happen here in Hawaii, and to train our local talent for that. Already, we are also looking at satellite development. The community colleges, the UH School of Engineering have all participated in building parts of satellites or building satellites, and these are small satellites. So everybody's old vision of a satellite is like a bus that they're launched into space. And nowadays, the small satellites are hand size, and they're really small. And to be able to create those locally has already been done in community college classes at Kauai Community College, at Holmes Hall on the Manoa campus, Honolulu Community College, and working with our students here to build these satellites locally is another way of kind of looking at different areas and kind of creating other opportunities for our residents, for our students, for our graduates who would like to live and work in Hawaii and be able to afford that. And so, trying to create enough energy locally to find that niche for ourselves. Everybody wants to recreate Silicon Valley, but I don't think we want to be Silicon Valley, but we want to have those type of technologies and opportunities for us locally, and creating that is what is kind of key. Last thing I want to touch upon is renewable energy. Senator had kind of talked about renewable energy for a while, and I think I've been talking about it now for all 10 years that I've been in office, looking at renewable energy. And it's been a long trek, but right now we are finally, 30 seconds. We are finally about to open the first hydrogen fuel cell fueling station here on the Big Island at Nelha, which is kind of a really earth-shattering thing, because we've had a number of fueling stations in Hawaii. All of them have been on military bases behind the gate. So this is the first one that is available to the public to be able to drive up to and refuel your car. The second station is also underway in Mapunapuna, as Servco is putting in its own station for the Toyota Mirai that they hope to bring in shortly. So there are many opportunities that are facing us, and I'll talk more about it later.
Thank you, Rep. Nakashima. Rep. Todd, talk about your priorities. Thanks, Rep. Nakashima.
Aloha, everyone, and thank you for having me here. So I'm the new guy. My name is Chris, and I represent basically what you would consider central Hilo. So to give you kind of a map, it's everything south of Wainuinui, underneath Komohana Street, and then I also have pretty much everything in Waikea up to Hai, and then everything underneath that. So Pane'ewa, Keaukaha, downtown Hilo, house lots, the university, that sort of thing. So I guess I'd mostly like to take this as an opportunity to kind of introduce myself to everyone. Some of you know me, probably all of you know my family in some capacity. So I like to think of, my family's story here as being, kind of a quintessential Hilo story. On my father's side, he was born in Missouri. My grandfather was a drill instructor with the Marine Corps, and he moved here in the 1960s. So his family came with him, and my dad fell in love with Hawaii. He graduated from Radford, I think right after Bette Midler. And then, he went back to the mainland for a couple years and just didn't like it, and he came back. My mom was born in Japan, and to a single mother without resources. And it was a tough decision, but when she was 4, she was given up for adoption so that she could have a better life. Very difficult being half Caucasian, poor female in Japan in the 1950s, right? So she was adopted by the Lithed family in Hilo, thankfully. That's how I ended up here. And raised that way. My grandma ran the kitchens at Hilo High, and my grandfather was a school principal. And somehow out of all of that, they ended up calling Hilo her home in the long term, and here I am. And I think, for most of you probably, including myself, my appointment was a surprise. Of the 7 people who submitted their names to get nominated for the vacancy, I was the only one who would never run for office, and I wasn't terribly interested in it, honestly. But the presidential election really bothered me on a personal level, and I felt the need to get more involved here locally, because the way I looked at it, things felt so out of control that I wanted to find something that maybe I could help control, like do what I can over here locally. But it was definitely a surprise. Was not expecting it, and actually it's kind of a weird story. And I know Mike from when I was at Hawaii Paper Products, and I was just about to join the Japanese Chamber of Commerce. I had the check made out and everything, and then I got appointed, and I felt kind of weird spending their money when I was about to leave, right? So, but here I am, and so just to give you a brief overview, this was my first session, obviously, and I'm definitely very thankful for the very tightly knit House delegation we have from the Big Island. We're the only island where all of our representatives are members of the current, kind of majority leadership group. So it was definitely a very welcoming place to be brought into for the first time, and they did a lot to help, kind of guide me through the first session. I know Steve from when I was at Suisan Fish Market, and my old boss at the fish market used to tell me that, it really takes about a year of being there to really get a feel for how the fishing seasons work and, kind of learning what to expect. And it definitely felt that way in my first session, but, very thankful to be able to kind of lean on Rep. Nakashima, Onishi, as well as our, Senate delegation. And, thankfully through that and, them being very gracious, Hilo made out pretty well in terms of capital improvement projects, a lot of it towards education. Hilo High is technically in Rep. Nakashima's district, and I have Hilo Intermediate, which is kind of awkward. But we got some funding, definitely thanks to Rep. Nakashima for the Hilo High Auditorium and Hilo High Track and Field. Hilo Intermediate is going to get some brand new locker rooms. I'm not sure how many of you have spent a lot of time at Hilo High recently, but it's not a great state of affairs if you walk around. And it's not something I noticed before spending a lot of time on Oahu, but buildings are falling apart. If you go to the old gym, the bathrooms are all caution taped off, none of the showers work, and these are still used as classrooms, all over the place. So I guess my priority going forward is to kind of reinvest, especially in our infrastructure over here. I really believe the theory, kind of the broken window theory, that if things are well maintained and taken care of, if young people know that they're being paid attention to and invested in, that they're more likely to kind of come out of things okay. And then, beyond that, I really think that we're very fortunate to be here in East Hawaii, where we've been somewhat insulated from a lot of these very large structural problems that our state is facing. Somewhere between 30 to 50% of all new homes, depending on which island you're on, are purchased by non-residents, and a lot of them don't end up being inhabited long-term. They become vacation rentals or investment properties, and that hasn't touched East Hawaii in the same way that it has the rest of the state. Things are still somewhat affordable, but it's a big crisis. And I can speak from personal experience. Out of my core group of 10 or so friends in high school, I'm the only one who's still here. Everyone else is in Seattle or San Francisco, Honolulu, where there's more opportunity, but also, there's a chance at kind of building a life in the same way, and the perception is that that doesn't exist here. I think it does. I'm thankfully, married to a teacher. She works at Kalaniana Ole High School, and I definitely feel very invested here. But I think that if we don't really take a lot of proactive steps towards remedying this, I really think that we're going to see kind of the face of Hilo change pretty drastically over the next 10 to 20 years. So my long-term overarching goal is to kind of ensure that local families can make a life here and stay here and be successful. I've had the opportunity to tour a lot of long-term care facilities, and some of these cost $15,000 a month, and I don't know how families, make that tough decision in the end. With that being said, these upcoming legislative priorities, my first priority deals with the Promise program. And I know this is definitely a priority shared by a lot of members of the legislature, including Senator Kahele, who's the chair of the Senate Higher Ed Committee. So this year we were able to get kind of a small piece. We wanted it funded for the entire system, but we did end up extending it through the entire community college system here. And basically what it does is, if you are a or in this case a community college student, and you qualify for Pell Grants and are receiving Pell Grants, but not enough to meet your entire tuition, then the state will cover the remainder of that tuition. So it deals with those who are really, don't have the resources and who may be facing tough choices between dropping out and going into the workforce. So my primary goal this next session is to do whatever I can in my very limited amount of power as a freshman legislator to try and extend this system-wide. Partially so that when students do graduate from the community college, a lot of them come out with liberal arts degrees, that we're not cutting them off in a way, that they still have this opportunity after getting a liberal arts degree to go and pursue a four-year degree through the system. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is kind of totally unrelated, but I feel like it kind of ties into the fabric of the community, and that's Katsu Goto. And maybe, I'm not into audience participation, but can I get a hand for anyone, hand up, who knows who Katsu Goto is? I figured this room is probably more so than most parts of the state. We're at the Japanese Chamber. I did not know who Katsu Goto was prior to a couple weeks ago. I was in Honoka at the Heritage Museum, which is actually really special if you get a chance to check it out. And so I learned about him. He was born in Japan, and he worked for local government over there, so he learned to speak English. This is in the 1800s. And he moved here in 1885 to work on the plantations. But he was very resourceful, and after his initial contract, he started a general store in Honoka. And he was the first of his immigration group to do that. And he's really well beloved because he'd help interpret a lot of the contract details and help his fellow workers who were being kind of screwed over by some of the big plantation bosses. But what happened was, he kind of got a reputation for that. And when there was a fire at one of the plantations, four, kind of plantation workers, or like kind of, Lunas or people came in and they hogtied him and they lynched him. And it's the only documented lynching in Hawaii's history. And it's not taught in our schools. I'm a public school graduate. I've never heard the name before. And so I'm hoping that somehow through this session, we can come up with a way to kind of commemorate that sacrifice and help spread awareness, because I think we're really losing touch with a lot of our plantation roots, and this might be a small step in maintaining that fabric that makes Hawaii special. Thank you.